2 weeks before New Year's, my wife asked for silence. Not space, not let's cool off, not I need an hour. Silence, with rules. That's the part people always skip when they tell stories like this. They'll say, we took a break. Like it was a spa weekend for the marriage, like we rubbed eucalyptus oil on our problems and came out reborn. No. This was a policy update, a terms of service agreement, and somehow I agreed before my body caught up. Maybe because our marriage didn't look like the kind that breaks. No plates launched across the kitchen, no dramatic screaming matches, no nights sleeping in the car. We were the couple you point to at family dinners and say, see, they're solid. Solid like a brick. Also solid like a brick emotionally. I'm not one of those guys who thinks every conversation needs candles and a therapist's clipboard. But I do believe in talking. When something feels off, I bring it up. Not because I love conflict, because I hate silent poison. I'd rather take the punch than live with a shadow in the room. My wife, on the other hand, had recently discovered a new dialect. The language of boundaries, of energy, of protecting my peace, of doing the work. I swear, at some point she started speaking like an Instagram caption with a coupon code. She'd say things like, I'm being intentional with my energy, while leaving dirty mugs in the sink like they were part of her spiritual practice. I thought calm meant we were stable. I didn't know it meant she was already gone. That morning, December 17th, the house was quiet in the normal way. The kind of quiet where you can hear the fridge hum and the neighbor's dog trying to die from excitement every time a leaf moves outside. I was making coffee. She walked in wearing one of those matching lounge sets. Soft, clean, coordinated. She looked composed, like she'd already had the argument in her head, won it, and came to inform me of the results. She didn't sit down. She didn't ask how I slept. No warm-up. She leaned against the counter, crossed her arms, and said, I need 14 days of silence before New Year's. I blinked. Once. Slow. Okay, I said. Silence like, no yelling, no arguing, because I can do that. I'm basically a professional at not yelling. She didn't smile. No, silence, she repeated, as if I was a toddler who had tried to eat a battery. No initiating, no emotional conversations, no pressure. I set my mug down carefully, the way you do when you're trying not to shatter anything expensive, like your dignity. Are we doing a challenge? I asked. Like those couples who go 30 days no sugar, but it's 14 days no personality? Her eyes narrowed just enough to let me know humor was not on today's approved list. This isn't a joke. I nodded. Right, of course. Sorry, I forgot. This is a sacred ritual. She inhaled slowly, another new habit. The kind of inhale you do when you're about to say something that will hurt, but you want to look morally superior while you do it. Then she began, like reading off bullet points from a clipboard only she could see. Don't text me first. I waited for the rest, like maybe it would turn into something reasonable. It didn't. Don't ask deep questions. Don't try to fix or clarify anything. If it gets hard, she added, voice smooth as polished stone, that's your work, not mine. I stared at her, not in confusion. In the same way you stare at a car rental agreement that suddenly includes a paragraph about donating a kidney. So, I said slowly, to recap, for the next 14 days, I'm not allowed to talk to my wife, unless spoken to. And even then, I should keep it light, like weather updates. She tilted her head, and for a second she looked almost pleased, like I was finally learning. Yes, she said, exactly. Cool, I replied. Should I bow when you enter a room too, or is that only on weekends? Her mouth tightened. She didn't like sarcasm, but she liked control more, so she kept going. If you break the silence, she said, and there it was. The line delivered calmly, like she was explaining a return policy. You'll prove you don't respect me. That sentence landed in the room with a soft thud. No fireworks, no drama, just a clean, sharp blade placed on the counter between us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I just took a second and let myself actually feel what was happening. This wasn't space. This was a test. And it had only one passing grade: obedience. I leaned back against the counter, mirroring her posture, matching energy, since we were doing that now. Okay, I said. Let me ask one question before the silent monastery phase starts. What are we actually solving here? Like, what's the goal? Her eyes flicked away. That was the first crack. This is for clarity, she said. I need to reset. I need to feel clean. Clean. Like I was a mess on her hands. And the rules are, I said, I'm not allowed to ask you how you're doing? No, she snapped, then corrected herself instantly, smoothing it out. Not like that. Not in a way that pulls me into a conversation. I nodded. Got it. So I can ask you how you're doing as long as I don't expect an answer. Yes. There was a moment where I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. But I didn't. I watched her carefully. She was calm. Too calm. Like she'd practiced. That's the detail people don't tell you. When someone gives you rules like this, they've been living with them internally for a while. You're just now getting the memo. And I'm not a doormat. I don't do punishment protocols. I don't do communication embargoes. Not in my own house. But I also don't swing wildly when I don't understand the battlefield. So I decided to do something that would have shocked earlier versions of me. I agreed. Because I wanted to see where it led. 14 days, I repeated. No initiating. No deep questions. No fixing. If it's hard, that's my work. She exhaled as if she'd just successfully negotiated a peace treaty. Thank you, she said, softening a fraction. I appreciate you respecting me. I picked up my mug again, took a slow sip and said, Sure, but just so we're clear, silence doesn't mean I'm absent. It means I'm observing. That got a flicker out of her. Not fear, not yet, but surprise. Like she expected me to fold into myself, to turn into a quiet, apologizing shadow. Instead, I was calm. She walked past me, toward the hallway, like the conversation was done and the contract was signed. Then, from the doorway, she added casually, Oh, and don't make me the bad guy for needing this. I turned slightly, just enough to meet her eyes. I won't, I said. As long as you don't make me the villain for noticing what it is. Her expression tightened again. She disappeared down the hall, and that was it. Day 1. The first moment of silence wasn't loud. It was clean. It was clinical. And it wasn't peace. It was a controlled demolition, starting with the smallest pieces. I stood alone in the kitchen with my coffee and a new understanding. If someone needs 14 days of silence from you, they've already been talking, just not to you. The first morning of silence didn't start with tension. That would have been easier. It started with normal sounds. The fridge humming, the kettle clicking off, her footsteps in the kitchen, calm, light, unbothered. I woke up earlier than usual, mostly because my body refused to pretend everything was fine, not panic. Just that quiet alertness you get when something in the house feels rearranged. I walked into the kitchen. She was already there, making oatmeal. Just one bowl, hers. She glanced at me for half a second, polite, neutral, then looked back at the stove. Morning, I said. Nothing, no sigh, no eye roll, no theatrical pause, just absence, like the word never arrived. I poured coffee, let the silence sit, counted to 5 in my head just to see if she'd fill it. She didn't. She ate standing up, scrolling her phone, completely relaxed. When she finished, she rinsed the bowl, placed it in the drying rack, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. Phone face down on the counter, like it always was now. Hey, I said, keeping my voice even. Have you seen my keys? She stopped in the hallway, turned her head slightly, not toward me, past me. Don't make this a conversation, she said, calm and precise. Then she walked out. The door closed gently, no slam. I stood there, coffee in hand, staring at the empty hallway like I'd missed a step in a dance I didn't know we were doing. I found the keys 10 minutes later, on the hallway shelf. exactly where I'd already checked twice. I stood there for a moment, then picked them up and put them in my pocket. Didn't say anything when she came home later, didn't ask, didn't joke. I made a mental note and moved on. That afternoon, I needed to run to the store. Normal errands, groceries, the kind of boring coordination that married people don't even think about. We were almost out of coffee filters, so I sent a text. Need anything from the store? 3 minutes later, read. No reply. I waited a bit longer, not because I expected one, but because I wanted to see how long she'd let it sit. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. I locked my phone and put it down. At the store, I bought everything we usually get. Same brand, same size, no experiments. When I came back, she was on the couch, legs tucked under her, watching some lifestyle show. Everyone on screen was smiling and talking about intentional living. I put the bags on the counter. I didn't hear back, so I just grabbed the usual, I said. She nodded once, still didn't look at me. Thanks, she said. That was it. No follow-up. No acknowledgement that a question had existed. Just transaction complete. That night, I noticed something uncomfortable. I was lowering my voice without meaning to. Not whispering, just softer. Like I was trying not to disturb something fragile. At one point, I started to ask where she'd put something and caught myself mid-sentence. Hey, sorry. I stopped, stood there in the bedroom staring at the wall. Reset. Then I asked again, normal volume. Where's the charger? She didn't answer. She didn't even look up. I'm not engaging today, she said. Engaging. Like I'd asked her to debate philosophy instead of locate a cable. I found the charger myself, on her side of the bed, plugged in, charging her phone. The next morning followed the same rhythm. She moved through the apartment easily, confident, like nothing was wrong. I spoke when I needed to, short sentences, neutral tone. She responded only when it suited her, or not at all. At one point, I asked what time she'd be home. She paused, thought about it, then said, late. That was the whole answer. No context, no detail. Late could have meant dinner. Midnight. Next week. I nodded and said nothing. By the end of the second day, the silence didn't feel dramatic. It felt procedural, like a system that had rules I wasn't allowed to see, but was expected to follow perfectly. And the strangest part? She seemed lighter, more relaxed, while I was the one double-checking every sentence in my head before letting it out. The days started blending together after that. Same mornings, same quiet kitchen, same careful distance, like we were sharing an apartment under a ceasefire agreement neither of us had signed properly. In the evenings, I'd come home first. I'd turn on the small string of lights in the living room. Not for atmosphere, just because the overhead light made everything feel like a waiting room. The lights were warm, soft, familiar. She never commented on them. She'd walk past, take off her coat, move through the room like the lights were part of the furniture. Not annoyed, not appreciative, just unaffected. Her phone was always face down, on the counter, on the couch, on the nightstand, not hidden, displayed. At first I noticed it, then I started counting how often I noticed it. The answer was every time. Dinner became a quiet exercise in logistics. Plates, forks, minimal words. Food's ready. Okay. She ate. I ate. No shared commentary. No, how was your day? No jokes, no complaints. At one point, I said, I'm thinking of fixing the loose cabinet door this weekend. She paused, chewed, swallowed. Do whatever you think is best, she said. No follow-up, no interest, no objection. It wasn't permission. It was dismissal. Later that night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom and asked, casually, Are you going to bed soon? She didn't look up from her phone. I'll come when I'm ready, she said. Not cold, not sharp, just final. So I went to bed alone. Not in a dramatic way. No sighing, no staring at the ceiling like a rejected poet. I slept. And that, more than anything, seemed to irritate her. The next evening followed the same script. I didn't initiate conversation. Not out of obedience, but because I was curious how long the silence could stretch without collapsing under its own weight. Turns out, pretty far. At one point, she came into the living room while I was reading. She stood there for a second longer than necessary, waiting. I looked up. "Yes?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Never mind," and walked away. I almost smiled, because that was the first crack. Not in the silence, in the control. Later, while I was washing dishes, she said from behind me, "You seem calmer." I turned slightly, dried my hands on a towel. "I am," I said. That wasn't a lie. She studied my face like she was trying to locate something that used to be there. "Good," she said. "That means the process is working." "The process." I nodded. "If you say so." She didn't like that answer. I could tell. It didn't argue with her, but it didn't agree either. That night, she sat on the couch scrolling, legs tucked under her, completely relaxed. I poured myself a drink, not to cope, just because it was evening and I wanted one. She watched me do it. Didn't comment, didn't ask, didn't join. At some point, she said, "You haven't tried to talk to me much." I looked at her over the rim of the glass. "You asked for silence," I said. "I'm respecting it." She nodded slowly. "Yes," she said, "but you're not reaching." I shrugged. I thought that was the point. She didn't answer. She just turned her phone face down again. And that's when I realized something important. Not in a dramatic epiphany kind of way. Just a quiet adjustment. This wasn't about giving her space. It was about seeing how little of me was required for her to feel comfortable. And the answer so far was very little. Eventually, the calendar forced my hand. You can ignore silence for a while. You can pretend it's a phase, a mood, a wellness experiment gone slightly off the rails. But some things don't disappear just because you refuse to name them. Christmas was one of those things. Her parents had already asked twice what time we were arriving. Politely, casually. The kind of messages that assume a normal marriage exists on the other end. I let the first one sit, then the second. By the third evening, it was clear that if I didn't ask, the decision would simply be made without me, and I'd be informed afterward like a guest who missed the email. So I waited until she was in a good mood, or what passed for it now. She was in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, humming quietly to herself. Comfortable, grounded, at peace in a house where one person wasn't allowed to speak freely. I leaned against the counter, kept my tone light. "So," I said, "what's the plan for Christmas? Your parents are waiting to hear from us." She didn't answer right away. She kept cutting. Slow, precise, like she was deciding whether the question deserved oxygen. Finally, without looking at me, she said, "Let's not discuss that right now." I nodded once. "Okay, when would be a good time?" She stopped cutting. That alone felt like progress. "Why do you always need answers immediately?" she asked. "I don't," I said. "I just need one answer, at some point." She sighed, softly. The kind of sigh designed to sound patient while making you feel unreasonable. "I told you I need space," she said. "This feels like pressure." I almost laughed. Pressure, for asking where we'd be on Christmas. "I'm not trying to pressure you," I said. "I'm trying to coordinate a holiday, with real people, who exist." She finally looked at me then. Her expression was calm, but her eyes had that familiar edge, like she was already preparing her explanation for why this was somehow my failure. "You're breaking the silence," she said. I tilted my head. I asked a logistical question. "You're pulling me into a conversation," she replied. "That's exactly what I said I couldn't do right now." I let that sit between us. The unspoken message was clear. If I pushed, I'd be the problem. If I stayed quiet, decisions would be made without me. "Okay," I said finally. "Just let me know when you decide." She smiled, small, satisfied. "Thank you for respecting my boundary," she said. Respect. That word was doing a lot of heavy lifting lately. The next day, she mentioned, casually over coffee, that she'd told her parents we'd be coming later in the afternoon. No discussion, no question. Statement of fact. "Oh," I said. "Good to know." She watched me carefully, like she was expecting resistance. When it didn't come, her shoulders relaxed. That's the thing about control. It needs friction to feel justified. Without it, it just sits there, exposed. The day before Christmas, the silence shifted again. She wasn't colder. If anything, she was pleasant. She asked if I'd wrapped the gifts, commented on the tree, even laughed at something on TV, then caught herself and went quiet again. It was like she was rehearsing normality. Christmas morning arrived quietly. No tension, no argument. We got dressed, drove to her parents' house together, music low, windows fogged slightly from the cold. She talked in the car, about traffic, about the weather, about nothing. I responded when spoken to, short answers, neutral tone. When we arrived, the house was warm and bright. Lights everywhere, smell of food, laughter spilling out before the door even opened. Her mother hugged me, long, genuine. "You made it," she said. "We were worried you'd be stuck in traffic." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. My wife transformed the moment we stepped inside. Her smile widened. Her voice softened. She touched my arm when she spoke, laughed easily, asked questions, listened. If someone had only seen her there, they'd think we were fine. Better than fine. At one point, her aunt looked at us and said, "You two seem so calm together." My wife smiled. I smiled too. Because that's what calm couples do when there are witnesses. She barely spoke to me directly the entire afternoon. Not rudely, not obviously, just efficiently. A comment here, a glance there, enough to maintain the image. During dinner, she reached for the salt and brushed her fingers against mine. Anyone watching would have thought it was affection. It wasn't. It was choreography. On the drive home, she leaned back in her seat, visibly relaxed. "That went really well," she said. "I feel good about today." I kept my eyes on the road. "Yeah," I said. "It did." She turned to me, studied my face. "You're quiet," she said. I glanced at her, still respecting the silence. She nodded approvingly. That night, lying in bed, I understood something without needing to spell it out. Christmas hadn't brought us closer. It had confirmed the distance. And the scariest part wasn't how comfortable she looked without me. It was how easily she could perform with me when she needed to. After Christmas, the silence changed texture. Before, it had been polished, intentional, wrapped in the language of boundaries and self-care, something she could explain if asked. Now it didn't bother dressing itself up. It just existed. The house felt bigger, not emptier, bigger, like two people living parallel lives under the same roof, occasionally crossing paths like commuters who recognize each other but don't speak. She stopped pretending it was temporary. No more process. No more reminders about respecting space. Just routine. She came and went on her schedule, ate when she wanted, showered when she wanted, watched shows I didn't recognize, laughed at her phone more often than she used to. The phone still stayed face down. I stopped paying attention to that part, not because it stopped happening, because I didn't need the reminder anymore. One evening she walked in while I was tightening a loose screw on the cabinet door, the one I'd mentioned earlier. She watched me for a second. "You didn't have to do that," she said. I shrugged. It was loose. She nodded. No thank you. No comment. Then she went into the bedroom and closed the door. I finished the job, wiped my hands, and realized something mildly amusing. I wasn't trying anymore. Not in protest. Not as a statement. I just stopped adjusting myself around her. I ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired, left the room if the air felt stale, stayed if it didn't. If she spoke to me, I answered. If she didn't, I didn't fill the gap. The silence didn't scare me the way it had at first. It got boring. That's what control never anticipates. That at some point, the person on the other end might simply stop reacting. One night, she cooked dinner. Actually cooked, not reheated leftovers. Real effort. She set the table for two. "Dinner's ready," she said. I looked at her, mildly surprised. "Okay," I replied. We ate together, quietly but not tense. Halfway through, she said, "I've been feeling clearer lately." I nodded. "That's good." She waited, expected something else. I kept eating. "I think the silence helped," she continued. "I'm glad it worked for you," I said. That stopped her. She put her fork down slowly, looked at me. "You say that like it didn't help you." I met her eyes. Calm. "I didn't say that," I replied. "I just said it helped you." She studied me like she was trying to read fine print she'd skipped earlier. "Well," she said carefully, "how do you feel?" There it was, the first real opening she'd offered since this whole thing started. I considered lying, not to protect her, just to keep things smooth. Then I decided not to. "I feel organized," I said. "Organized?" she repeated. "Yeah. Things make more sense when they're quiet long enough." She frowned slightly. "That doesn't sound very emotional." I smiled. "You didn't ask how emotional I felt." She didn't like that. She pushed her plate away, stood up, started cleaning. Faster than necessary. The next day, she was distant again. Colder, not angry, just less available. The pattern was obvious now. Warmth when she felt in control. Distance when she didn't. I stopped trying to decode it. At some point, she said, "You've changed." I looked up from my laptop. "In what way?" "You're harder to read," she said. I nodded. Probably the silence. She stared at me for a long second, then said, "That's not what I meant." "I know," I replied. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because things were improving, because I finally stopped waiting for them to. The shift didn't come suddenly. It eased in. One evening, she asked if I wanted pasta or rice. Not rhetorically, not as a test. As an actual question. I looked up from my laptop. "Pasta's fine." She nodded. "Okay." That was it. But it was the first time in days she'd asked my preference about anything. Dinner that night felt normal, almost suspiciously so. She lit a candle. Just one. Not romantic. Decorative. The kind you light when you want the room to look intentional without committing to intimacy. She poured wine. For both of us. "Do you want red or white?" she asked. "Red," I said. She poured it without comment and sat down across from me. For a few minutes, we ate in silence. Not the sharp kind, the neutral kind. The kind couples fall into after years together when there's nothing urgent to say. Then she spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said. Of course she had. "Yeah?" I replied. She nodded. This time alone really helped me get clarity. I kept eating. "About what?" "About myself," she said quickly. "About what I need, what I can and can't tolerate." She talked slowly, carefully choosing words like she was stepping across stones in a river. "I realized I've been carrying a lot," she continued, "emotionally." I waited. She didn't ask if I'd noticed, or if I felt the same. She just kept talking. "I tend to absorb other people's moods," she said, "and I lose myself when I do that." I nodded. Not agreement, acknowledgement. "That's why the silence was important," she added. I needed to hear my own voice again. "I feel lighter," she said. "Don't you?" "I feel rested," I replied. She tilted her head. "Rested how?" "Less noise," I said. "More space." She smiled wider. "See? That's exactly what I mean." I didn't correct her. The next day, she suggested we watch a movie together. Not a favorite, not something meaningful, just something easy. We sat on the couch, a polite distance between us. She leaned her head against my shoulder halfway through. It felt rehearsed. After the movie, she said, "I miss when things feel simple between us." I looked at the dark TV screen. "Things are simple right now." She frowned slightly. "That's not what I meant." She studied my face again. That same searching look. "You're not opening up," she said. "You haven't asked me to," I replied. You set the rules. She didn't answer. Over the next couple of days, she stayed like this, soft, attentive, present, but only in one direction. She talked about her realizations, her exhaustion, her emotional growth. She never asked how the silence felt for me, never asked what it cost, never asked if I wanted it to end. One night, while we were brushing our teeth side by side, she said casually, I think I'm ready to move forward. I spat, rinsed, wiped my mouth. Forward how? She smiled at our reflections in the mirror. Fresh start, no resentment, no digging up the past. I looked at her in the mirror too. And the silence? I asked. She waved her hand dismissively. That did its job. I nodded. Good to know. She turned toward me then, fully, hands on the counter. You don't sound excited, she said. I'm neutral, I replied. That's not the same thing, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. She stared at me, visibly unsettled. Because neutrality doesn't validate, it doesn't reassure, it doesn't chase. Later that night, she climbed into bed closer than she had in weeks. Not intimate, just nearer. She said softly, I think we'll be okay. I didn't respond right away. Then I said, maybe. She turned her head. That doesn't sound very confident. I looked at the ceiling. Confidence usually comes after honesty. She went quiet, pulled the blanket a little closer to herself. The next morning, she was distant again, polite, controlled. The warmth hadn't disappeared, it had been withdrawn, and that's when it finally clicked. Not as a dramatic realization, but as a simple observation. This wasn't reconciliation. This was her closing her chapter. And I was just the last item on the checklist. New Year's Eve didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a deadline. The apartment was clean. Too clean. Surfaces wiped, pillows arranged, nothing out of place. The kind of order people create when they want the outside to look resolved, even if the inside isn't. She moved through the rooms with purpose, showered early, did her makeup carefully but not dramatically, chose an outfit that said effort, not occasion. I noticed she didn't ask what I was wearing, not because she didn't care, because it didn't factor into her plan. We ate something simple, takeout. No candle this time. She poured champagne into 2 glasses and handed one to me. To a fresh start, she said. I took the glass. Cheers. The TV counted down somewhere in the background. Music. Commercials. People pretending the number changing on the calendar meant something by itself. She sat on the couch, legs crossed, glass in hand. Looked relaxed. Comfortable in a way she hadn't been all month. I feel clean now, she said suddenly. I turned slightly toward her. Clean? She nodded. Mentally, emotionally, like I cleared out a lot of noise. She took a sip, smiled to herself. I'm ready to start fresh. There it was. The sentence she'd been building toward for 2 weeks. I didn't rush my response. Fresh, I repeated. With me? She didn't answer. Not immediately. She just looked at her glass, rolled it gently between her palms, like she was buying time without admitting it. That pause told me everything. Still, I waited. She looked up eventually, her expression calm, almost gentle. I think, she said carefully, that if we do this right, things could be lighter between us. That wasn't an answer. So yes? I asked. She exhaled slowly. I don't want to define it right now. I nodded once. Of course she didn't. Defining things creates edges, and edges create responsibility. The countdown got louder. 10, 9, 8. She shifted closer to me on the couch, close enough that her shoulder brushed mine. 7, 6. She smiled up at me. You've handled this really well, she said. 5, 4. That one almost made me laugh. 3, 2, 1. Fireworks exploded on the screen. Music swelled. People screamed like they'd personally survived something. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. Happy New Year. I didn't move, didn't pull away, didn't lean in either. She noticed, pulled back slightly. Everything okay? I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't afraid. She was done. I think we should talk, I said. Her smile faded just enough to register concern. Now? She asked. It's New Year's? Yeah, I said. That feels appropriate. She set her glass down slowly. Okay. I took a breath, not to steady myself, just to mark the moment. I'm not upset, I said. I'm not angry. I'm not here to argue. She nodded cautiously. But I'm also not confused anymore, I continued. The silence wasn't about us reconnecting. She didn't interrupt. It was about you disconnecting, I said, and making sure I didn't interfere while you did it. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair, she said. It's accurate, I replied. She crossed her arms, defensive now, familiar posture. I needed time, she said. I needed space. You needed control, I said calmly. And I gave it to you, long enough to see what happens when I disappear. I never asked you to disappear, she said. No, I agreed. You just set rules that made it inconvenient for me to exist. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I stood up. Not abruptly, just stood. I'm not interested in a fresh start that begins with erasing myself, I said. I don't want a relationship where silence is a tool and clarity only goes one way. She stood too. So what are you saying? I met her eyes. I'm saying I won't stay in something where I'm managed instead of chosen. Her voice dropped. You're ending this? I shook my head. I think you ended it quietly. I'm just acknowledging it out loud. She looked stunned now, not devastated, just surprised. I thought you understood, she said. I did, I replied. That's the problem. I grabbed my jacket, my keys. No drama. At the door, I paused. Silence can heal, I said. But when it's one-sided, it's just preparation for goodbye. She didn't follow me, didn't stop me, didn't argue, and that told me I was right. Outside, the night was loud. People celebrating, fireworks cracking overhead. I walked into it feeling something unexpected. Relief. People keep asking why I left. Not in a dramatic way. More like they're trying to solve a puzzle and think I'm holding back a missing piece. There isn't one. I didn't leave because of silence. I left because the silence showed me exactly how little of me was required for her life to function. I left because every rule had gone in one direction. Because space meant I stopped asking questions, but decisions kept getting made. Because respect meant restraint from me, not consideration from her. And because at some point, I realized I wasn't being invited back into the relationship. I was being tolerated near it. After I left, things unfolded quietly. No public drama, no long messages, no sudden confessions. She told people we grew apart, that she had done a lot of inner work, that the silence helped her understand herself better. All of that was probably true. She got what she came for. I got something else. Distance, not from her, but from the version of myself that thought patience alone could fix imbalance. We spoke once, weeks later, briefly. She asked if I was doing okay. I said yes. She said she hoped I didn't resent her. I told her I didn't. Resentment requires attachment. I'd already let go. As for me, I didn't rush into anything new. I didn't need to prove I was desirable or right. I just rebuilt my days without checking whether my presence was inconvenient. I speak when something matters. I stay silent when it doesn't. But the difference now is simple. The silence is mine. And if I ever share it again, it won't be because someone asked me to disappear. It'll be because someone knows how to listen. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.